An interesting story today where Golden Tate, of course, longtime receiver with the Seattle Seahawks and quarterback Russell Wilson, and also played for the Detroit Lions. He came out today and said that Russell Wilson is not the best quarterback that he ever played with, but instead that it is Matthew Stafford. Here's the quote from Golden Tate. Stafford's been the best quarterback I've played with. The guy can flat out play. He's tough and his attitude is amazing, and he just wants to play ball. For me, I have nothing but praises for him. It's almost unfair that he's such a good player and doesn't have playoffs or a ring to show for it. That kind of hurts my heart that I wasn't able to help change that. But I think over his career, if you put him in another organization, maybe things are different. I don't know. I've played with some guys over my years that I've won playoff games with that I don't think are as good. Now, obviously, we know who he's talking about. He's talking about Russell Wilson. So he doesn't think he's as good. And I understand where Tate is coming from in that Stafford has a golden arm. Mm-hmm. The golden arm that has fooled all of us for many years. It's got him to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. With Tate, he worked magic. Tate played 4 seasons with Stafford, caught 372 balls. That's 93 per year, 19 touchdowns, 66 yards a game. With Wilson, 2 full seasons, only 109 catches. That's 54 and a half per year. So he's catching 40 more balls a year from Stafford. 12 TDs from Wilson. That's a higher rate per year than he had with Stafford, but only 51 yards a game.
CB.
So I get where Tate is coming from. And if I were a wide receiver, I would love to play with a guy with Stafford's arm. I understand. But to actually say he is better than Russell Wilson, I'm sorry, it's flat out ridiculous.
So
it's flat out ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
We are paying these quarterbacks $30 million a year to win games, to reach the playoffs. And Stafford hasn't done it. In 10 years in the league, he's played in 3 playoff games. I get it. He's with the Detroit Lions, the horrible Detroit Lions. But he also had Calvin Johnson, one of the best wide receivers we've ever seen. And some of it can be on Johnson too, but still, they didn't work enough magic. Whereas Russell Wilson is a straight up winner. All right? It's the best quarterback is not necessarily the guy with the best arm. It's not necessarily the guy with the best physical attributes. Do we talk about Aaron Rodgers as the GOAT? Oh, he's great. We might say he's the best thrower of the football we've ever seen. But we talk about Tom Brady and Joe Montana as the GOATs.
So CB, because you just said a whole lot, and I knew that I've given up on the Detroit Lions. However, now
I know you're not going to come up in here and defend Matthew Stafford.
You have forced me to become Johnny Cochran and defend somebody. Now,
stop.
Here's the conversation. Here's the conversation. If you're Golden Tate and you're having a candid, open, honest conversation, he's basing that off of what he's seen day in and day out from practice, even games, as you just mentioned, the stats where he's like, man, when I'm open, I'm getting the ball. When I got a guy beat, I'm getting the ball. And he's only seeing productivity increase with himself playing with Matthew Stafford all those years. And he saw that it was a different scenario with Russell Wilson. Now, I will say this. You have to look at what guys have around them, what guys have built into them. And I feel like I keep having to remind you of this. I had to do it yesterday. Now I'm doing it today. When you walk into a situation, as Golden Tate did and Russell Wilson did with the Seattle Seahawks, where they have a great defense, a very good coach, a probably Hall of Fame Marshawn Lynch running back, and a scheme, schematics that they know this is what we're going to do, then all of a sudden, remember, Russell Wilson was a game manager at first, but he was able to manage the game because they would run the ball, play great defense, and we're going to beat you. We're going to get Legion of Boomed. And the same thing with Tom Brady. Tom Brady was all right at first. We were like, all right, he can play a little bit. He was a game manager.
Do you remember the winning streak he took the Patriots on?
Right.
Immediately?
No, and if you watch what was required of him, it wasn't too much. Was he good? Yeah, it was fine. He was fine. You didn't think he would be.
You know what's required of him? Winning. Serious.
But no.
Simple as that.
But what I'm saying is what helped him win.
Save the gaudy stats if you don't win.
What helped him win was being in a situation where all of a sudden I have a great coach again, Bill Belichick.
Why didn't it help Drew Bledsoe win?
Well, he was winning. He didn't win it all.
He didn't win like Brady. And that year they were struggling.
Not to mention, who knows? If Brady doesn't get hurt, maybe they do win. Now that's not to say Russell Wilson is not an amazingly talented quarterback. Obviously, Tom Brady, you could say, is the greatest. So nobody's knocking that. But what I'm saying, and what Golden Tate was also saying, I don't know if you mentioned it. Maybe I missed it. But he was saying the fact that if you took Matthew Stafford and you put him in those scenarios, it would be amazing to see what he would do.
That's not how we do it.
But
I'm sorry.
That's what he's saying.
I'm not going to sit here. I don't care who's the better practice player. I don't.
Don't disrespect that man like that.
No, I'm
Don't
serious.
disrespect that man like he wasn't throwing for all types of thousands of yards and
How many
touchdowns.
of them were with the team behind and he had to throw for yards and the team's playing a prevent defense? How about that?
So
we don't sit here and say about God, well, wow, if he had been in a better situation, he would have been better. No. But you do what you do.
That's our job. Our job is to tell, we say who was the best at the end. But Golden Tate's job.
You do what you. Okay, Golden Tate's job is what?
But Golden Tate's job is in answering that question is telling you, hey, look, I know who I played with and I know who was better. Now, again, you and I can say.
Do you think Matthew Stafford's better than Russell Wilson?
If you're lining those two up, give me Russell Wilson. But if you say who has the better talent, I could see him saying Matthew Stafford.
That's not how we judge players. Who has the better talent? And I mean, seriously.
And I'm with you on that. But I'm saying
in any sport, it's about production, isn't it? Not is it not about production?
But it's not about production singularly, meaning it's especially in football. Basketball, because you're 20% of the team by being one of the 5 players out there, you have much more weight on what you can do. Football, we know. We have seen, you mentioned it. Let's go with Aaron Rodgers. He might be the greatest football player, period. I don't care.
But he'll never be recognized as that without the wins. And we're not going to sit there and say, you know what? If he had been in New England, we can daydream about that, but we judge him on what you did.
But why can't you, Chris Broussard, who I know is an intelligent, a fair, and a balanced man, why can't you be nuanced to say Aaron Rodgers, let's say he doesn't win again, right? Aaron Rodgers ends up with 1, maybe 2 if he plays another 6-7 years. But let's say he ends up with 1 or 2. And we'll say Tom Brady had, 6, maybe 7, who knows what he'll end up with. And Peyton Manning had this, and John Elway had that. We'll go on down the list. But can't you be like, look, I don't know what the team had around him, and he didn't have the best situations and the best coaches. But all I know is if you're asking me who's the best quarterback I ever saw, that is Aaron Rodgers. Why couldn't you be able to say that?
No, because intangibles come into play. That's nuance, and that's what Russell Wilson has in spades.
And I would agree.
Matthew
and I agree.
Stafford.
That's why I said
that's what I'm saying. Like I don't need. I mean, it's nice to have the great arm, but if you don't have the great mind, if you're not a leader of men, if you can't galvanize the locker room, if you don't have it in crunch time, then it doesn't matter as much. Again, Joe Montana and Tom Brady are the guys we talk about as the GOAT. Neither one of them was the most physically gifted quarterback in the world, but they had it between the ears.
And they had Bill Belichick and Bill Walsh. Boy, oh boy, give me a Bill. Give me a Bill.
Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson. We gonna take that away from him?
No.
We gonna say George Gervin was better if George Gervin had only had a Phil Jackson for coach?
No, but
that's not how we do it.
Right, but we can have the conversation of who was a better player, who was more talented. You can have that conversation, and I think that's what Golden Tate is saying.
All right, well,
He's not saying who's the most accomplished.
Let me throw this into the conversation. Matthew Stafford versus Russell Wilson. Stafford loses on the numbers too. All right? I mean, Stafford's been the 1 Pro Bowl in 10 years. Wilson's been the 5 in 7 years. Wilson has the higher completion percentage by 2 percentage points. Wilson has the better TD to interception ratio. Wilson throws for more yards per attempt. I mean, you can give me all Stafford, yeah, he has a better arm. He probably looks much better in practice. He probably wows the onlookers in practice. But when it's Sunday afternoon and it's time to strap it up and win, and we've seen Russell Wilson with hardly any offense with him. Has he ever had a receiver like Calvin Johnson?
Don't disrespect Doug Baldwin.
You mentioned, all right.
Okay, that was a reach. That was a Stretch Armstrong reach on that one.
You mentioned Marshawn Lynch. Well, he hasn't had Marshawn Lynch for a while, and he makes it happen. So I agreed. I start off saying I understand why Tate might say it, but that's not how we measure quarterbacks. With Larry Bird, how many NBA players were far more athletic than Larry Bird?
Plenty, probably.
Thousands.
Yes.
But who was better? That's what, and I don't have
but that just
to
proved
sit
my.
here and say, well, if he was in this situation, if he was in that situation, no, that's daydreaming.
See, but you
Let's
can say
get to the facts,
and you can say that, and I'm with you for most cases. But I will say this, especially in football. At the end of his career, if you ask me, I'm sitting in a rocking chair smoking a cigar, and I got my great grandkids around me, and they ask me who's the best football player I ever saw. If it continues on the trajectory we're going, I'm probably going to say Aaron Rodgers.
But you know why you can say that? Because Aaron Rodgers' production, even though he's only won 1 Super Bowl, his production is still through the roof.
No, but that's
he's still a Hall of Famer.
Right, but
that's not going to be the case with Matthew Stafford.
That's counter to your point of all I can name. We know there are dozens of quarterbacks who have equal to, if not more, rings than him. But that's my whole point is sometimes you're able to look at a circumstance, and I'm not going to argue this too much specifically for Matthew Stafford because, again, we're talking about Russell Wilson.
But that's what we're talking about.
It's not like we're comparing him to Joe Flacco. Russell Wilson is a bona fide Hall of Famer, bona fide a great talent. But what I'm saying is, again, with Matthew Stafford.
I'm not saying, Kelvin, it's just rings. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying, it's flat out rings. Aaron Rodgers brings other stuff to the table. Individual production that is off the charts. Matthew Stafford, I know he's thrown for a lot of yards, but Rob calls him Stat Padford. Because a lot of those yards come when the game is over and the other team's in a prevent defense.
The biggest conversation, the biggest point I take away from that is, again, Golden Tate, I'm answering for him. He chose to look at it from, man, I see all this talent, and I say, man, if he was in another circumstance, how amazing would he be? And I think that's the biggest thing that sometimes in sports is lost, that if you are drafted in a bad situation, an 0-16 team, for example, and this team can never get it right, that will kind of be the book that is wrote. If you took a student
the great ones turn it around. And Dan Marino had never won a Super Bowl. I acknowledge him as one of the all-time greats because at least he won to some degree. Stafford just doesn't win 3 playoff games in 10 years.
I agree with that. I will say, it isn't over for him, meaning we don't have the full book on his career.
It's over.
But see, there you go. There you go.
Look at the Detroit homerism coming. I didn't know that was in you.
Robert, I need you to. Did I not denounce the Lions? Did I not?
No, you did it live on air.
All that is gone.
Listen,
all that is gone.
All I'm
saying
sat
here and tried to
sometimes,
defend Stafford,
my brother,
against Wilson.
You have to look at the full spectrum of things, the full spectrum, and realize what somebody's been drafted into, what's around them, and say, man, if Barry Sanders was on that Cowboys team during the '90s and swap Emmitt Smith out, we would never even question who the greatest running back was. Matter of fact, if you put your lips to say who's the best running back, somebody would smack you. Right, but what I'm saying is, if Barry was in those circumstances, we would never question. It would be Barry Sanders.
No, but Barry gets love anyway.
He gets love, but it will be unquestionable.
Why?
It will
because Barry didn't win either, but he was so dynamic that you just had to overlook that. And plus, he's a running back, which it doesn't matter as much for running backs. But Stafford hasn't been that dynamic where we're gonna overlook his futility in terms of wins.
Sometimes, brother, them circumstances can elevate perception.
You're reaching, bro.
Telling you.
You're reaching like a bad defender on the perimeter.
Put Barry Sanders with the Cowboys team.
Oh, yeah. I think Barry's clearly better than Emmitt. Cowboys are not. All right, is the gap. Let's let them weigh in.
All right, let's get to Jody in the ATL. Jody, man, you're on the Odd Couple with Chris Broussard, Kelvin Washington, in for Rob Parker.
Hey, how y'all doing today?
Doing
What's
well.
happening, man?
Hey, man, I really do agree with you, Calvin. The what-ifs are so crazy when it comes to sports. You could put anybody in any situation, and they could have a terrible career or they could have a crazy career. Like, we can just look at Jameis Winston, for instance. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have not been nothing, no threat to my Atlanta Falcons since forever. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then you look at Seattle, great coach, great defense. I've been hearing this for years. He's really been lucky.
What about the last couple years, though? What about the last couple?
Right.
Last year, was he not a one-man show?
Chris, you're right. He was a one-man show, but at the end of the day, they had a great system. They had a great system where they would run the ball.
The system was him running around. You're right. They ran the ball, but him running around making stuff happen.
But they didn't win. They didn't look that great either. So, yeah, and thank you for the call, Jody. I mean,
they won a lot more than Stafford.
But I'm saying, you just proved the point. When things were going awry, they started to lose guys, Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, all that. Yeah, things got different, and he's running around scrambling, and he is super talented. I agree.
But he got him to the playoffs, though.
And I agree that Russell Wilson is better. I agree. But Golden Tate, the point that I liked what he said was, and we have to think about it in sports sometimes people are so talented, so gifted, that if you say, man, if I could just place him in situation X, what would I have gotten? And that's what was going on. Let's keep it rolling. Tony in Maryland.
I noticed you got quickly.
Come on,
today.
CB. I'm just trying to get to the calls.
Hello? Yeah.
Tony, what's up?
Can you hear me?
We got you.
Go ahead.
Hey, guys, look, real quick. First of all, we're living in the if I woulda, coulda, shoulda world, okay?
Thank you, brother.
I thought you guys were joking. I honestly thought you guys were joking. I know you got to take up airtime and all that, but that's no comparison, man. Matthew Stafford to Russell Wilson. Come on, man. You playing. You got to be playing, man. I know you got to. Yeah.
I mean, come on. If Dominique Wilkins had been drafted by Chicago, he would be Michael Jordan.
See, now you want to go to extremes.
I'm just saying.
Now you want to go to extremes.
Neek was a Hall of Famer. Neek was legit.
He wasn't Jordan.
We put him with Phil Jackson and Scottie Pippen. Is he Jordan? I mean, come on.
He didn't have the same skill set as Jordan. Neek is underrated. I'm agreeing. I think Neek is underrated, but he ain't Jordan.
He's underrated. I think he's
properly
he's
rated.
A Hall of Famer. He gets his love.
I think Neek was nice, super nice. Let's keep it going. Adam, let's go to Adam in Bakersfield. You're on Odd Couple. Chris Broussard, Kelvin Washington in for Rob Park. What's going on, Adam?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Here's a what-if scenario for you, okay? Have them switch teams. Russell Wilson will figure something out in Detroit, and I guarantee you they'll win a playoff game. You put Stafford in Seattle.
Thank you, Adam.
Pete Carroll's going to be looking for another quarterback.
Wait. All right. So I'm with you, Adam, on the first one.
The great ones figure it out to some degree. To some degree. They may not win Super Bowls, but to some degree.
Right. And I thank you for giving Dan Marino props. Let's say Matt Stafford, they somehow put all the pieces together and they win a Super Bowl, okay? He's going to be like Joe Flacco. He'll never be a Hall of Famer. He's not that guy.
All right. We appreciate the call, Adam.
We got some smart callers up in here.
They doing all right. They like C+. They're like C+ grade point average. No. I mean, listen again. I agree. Russell Wilson. If you ask me, if whoever interviewed Golden Tate said, "Hey, Kelvin, who do you think is better?" I would have said Russell Wilson. But again, I just do believe that there are certain people. I'm not going to say everybody because there's certain people they wouldn't thrive anywhere. So I'm saying there are certain people who have a certain skill set or talent that if you put them in that right situation, again, like maybe Tom Brady isn't Tom Brady if he's somewhere else. Now maybe he is still quality quarterback.
Maybe he figures it out though. I mean, look. I get what you're saying, and there are situations you can think about those. But again, in sports, the all-time great ones, they figure it out.
Not all the time. All the time.
Name one.
You just did. You said Dan Marino. Shoot,
yeah, but I'm saying he won to a certain degree.
John Elway was not going. He wasn't on his way to figuring out till they finally got a defense and a running back.
He won two.
He got that,
and he got to three. I mean, I'm not saying they're gonna win the ultimate prize, but they're legit. Like Marino's Miami teams were good, even though they didn't win a Super Bowl. I mean, we can't say that about Stafford and his Detroit Lions.
A couple of good seasons.
Man, that homerism all up in you.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even like the Lions anymore. What is a lion? What is a lion?
I don't agree.
What is a lion?